Hello and welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to another round of the Middle of the Pack Racing League GT3 Championship for 2022, as brought to you on the premier sim racing platform available only on PC, known as iRacing. And today we mark round 6 of the 9-round calendar in the Brazilian circuit of Interlagos. And well, what sunny skies we have and a beautiful day ahead of us as our drivers get ready to go racing to conclude the America's Cup. Of course, the emphasis of the last couple of rounds, indeed today, is on celebrated circuits based in the continents of America, whether it be the North American continent, alternatively the South American continent, and we are firmly here in the South American continent, in the country of Brazil, to see things out at the conclusion of the Cup with our second feature race round of the season. Of course, our schedule, with this being a post-round broadcast where the racing is not being brought to you live per se, we're instead looking at an iRacing replay file with the racing having occurred on Wednesday the 19th of October. We're bringing it to you as if it were live for your viewing pleasure. Our schedule for tonight is as follows. You can see there's only one item on the agenda, and in times of British summertime, that's BST or Universal Coordinated Time +1, we will be going racing for our second feature race at 7:45 this evening. 40 minutes of racing, and let's see how the dust settles come the end and who will be our America's Cup champions. In the commentary booth, you have myself, Paul TX141 Walsh, also known as Brit of the Spit, depending on what media you follow me on. And I should point out to you to do a little bit of housekeeping that if you are tuning in as one of our racers, having taken part in this race earlier on in the week, we do ask you to avoid any spoilers in the chat, whether it's in the YouTube chat, alternatively the Twitch chat, for all the ladies and gentlemen who are tuning in, who are not affirmed as of the results of this race, as I, as your host and commentator, do not know what happens, whether it's in the practice session, alternatively in the race session itself. It's completely raw to me, and that way we can bring you the closest possible live experience to everybody tuning in at home. And we just briefly mentioned the two different chats, Twitch and YouTube. You can indeed tune in via two different media platforms for your viewing pleasure, as always. Firstly, if you are a YouTube user, you can go to youtube.com and search for TX11TX. Alternatively, Paul Walsh on YouTube and tune in there. Or if you're more of a Twitch person, you can go twitch.tv/TX11 and tune in on Twitch. But as our drivers are absolutely getting ready to go racing and absolutely itching at the steering wheel, let's take you through the calendar so far and what still lies in wait. Well, the calendar has absolutely been ram-packed full of fantastic racing venues, and today, as you can see, that we're wrapping up the America's Cup, where the races haven't occurred on the 19th of October. We were preceded last time out by visiting Canada at the circuit Jules Villeneuve, and there we saw plenty of drama at the circuit. There's no stranger to causing drama for champions with its Wall of Champions, and well, we did see Luke Burtenshaw coming together with Stefan Chalafou in the Wall of Champions. The two drivers there, one in the Pro class, one in the AM class, both of them coming together through the chicane sequence, of both of them ending up in the wall and having their races done to the dust. However, it was also the case that we saw plenty of battling up and down the field, and particularly in the AM class, some brilliant battling between the QZ Motorsport teammates and other drivers in amongst them as well. And you can imagine it's going to go down to the wire across all three classes with regards to who will be our America's Cup champions. Prior to that, of course, in round number 4, we were at Road Atlanta to kick off the America's Cup in the United States of America at the Brazelton circuit back on the 5th of October. And what brilliant racing we had there in the roller coaster ride of road racing that is Road Atlanta. And well, what an absolutely energetic America's Cup we've had today, and we hope to conclude on. And of course, it's not just about the America's Cup. Our first 3 rounds were focused on the Euro Cup, which, compared to the America's Cup being circuits focused around power on corner exit and absolutely delivering the throttle uphill, downhill, or in a straight line, the Euro Cup was a little bit more balanced in terms of the circuits. A bit of technical here, a little bit of straight line speed here, and everything in between. And we started off back on the 7th of September with our season opener at the Red Bull Ring, and then we saw plenty of battling down the straightaways and also through the sweeping corners of the Red Bull Ring. Then we went to the Hockenheim Ring in our second round, where we definitely saw, in the Pro class in particular, plenty of battling right towards the front of the field, in particular between the likes of Landry and also Burtenshaw. And then we concluded the Euro Cup at Silverstone with our first feature race round of the season back on the 21st of September. And that's the general theme. The first 2 rounds of each cup are a sprint round, which 25 minutes of racing preceded by a qualifying session, whereas the third round within the cup, so rounds 3, 6 and 9 over the overall schedule, are feature race rounds with 40 minutes of racing action, no qualifying session. We'll come on to very shortly how exactly we determine the grid for each of those feature races. But of course, we talked about the past, we talked about the present, but what lies in the future after today? Well, we are going to have a mid-season break, the second of our mid-season breaks, as is the tradition of the Middle Pack Racing Leagues, and then we'll make our way into the Japanese Cup, kicking off with the race on the 2nd of November at the Twin Ring Motegi circuit. And of course, the Japanese Cup being a celebration of all circuits Japan. Indeed, Japan, much like many a nation, a major contributor to motorsport in history, and they're started off at the Twin Ring Motegi circuit, a bit of an obscure circuit compared to most. Honda's dedicated test circuit at one point. Indeed, it has the infamous Honda Museum located there. And we start off at Motegi before making our way to Honda's additional test circuit, perhaps the one they're more known for these days, the Suzuka circuit in round number 8 on the 9th of November. And then we wrap up at the Fuji Speedway on the 16th of November to conclude the season. Now, Japanese circuits are perhaps the most technical out of the different types of circuit you're going to be seeing over the course of this season calendar. So indeed, we started off with the most balanced circuits in terms of characteristics for the Euro Cup. Then we've gone to the power-orientated circuits of the America's Cup. And then we're going to the most technical and handling-orientated circuits of the Japanese Cup to bring it all to a conclusion. So plenty still to come. There's no doubt about that. Now, of course, as we continue to charge through the season, let's give you a recap of the championship standings going into tonight, starting with the overall championship classes. So in the Drivers' Championship overall, we can see here that after 5 rounds, keeping in mind no drop scores come into effect, they will after today. Drop scores will start to apply in the overall championship stands, where every driver will have 1 drop score added to their tally. We can see Luke Burtenshaw here still leading in the pro class on 219 points, but only 3 clear of Jason Landry. And of course, Jason Landry has fought his way all the way back up to P2 very quickly, given that he did have a 30-point penalty going into the previous round with the car change. And from the Porsche 911 to the Lamborghini Huracan GT3 Evo, but Landry has wasted no time in cutting the deficit down and is right hot on the heels once again of Luke Burtenshaw. But of course, for Landry, he does have a sizable drop score to take into account, and that could give Burtenshaw a bit of a breathing room when we do review the scores following the end of this round. Then Jordan Butler, the best of the rest in P3 there on 194 points. The best part of what is there, 17 points clear of Tanner Dibble, but Tanner Dibble being one of those drivers to watch out for. Not quite as strong as perhaps he would like to have been back at Circuit Charles Villeneuve, but still at the same time, Dibble really delivering when it matters most and continued to try and squeeze down the pressure on Jordan Butler's rear. Then we have John Lozon in P5 on 160 points, with a sizable gap double the points to Edwin Offer in P6, Ben Rose P7 and Shane Larson in P8. Then we come onto the Pro-Am standings, and we can see going into tonight that James Logston leading on 204 points, and really the big question is who can hunt down Logston? It does not seem as though anybody's able to bring down that gap at the moment. Indeed, Logston continues to deliver round after round, and Matthew Smith, having been promoted as the America's Cup up into the Pro-Am class from the Am class after his dominance in the class in the Euro Cup, Matthew Smith finding it a major challenge, there's no doubt about that, but tried to rise to the occasion on 173 points. He is 12 clear of Milan Harris, with Fernando Takahashi just a further what is there 6 points behind. The story of these three, that Smith has not had the continued run of form that perhaps he's wanted to have so far, and therefore Harris and Takahashi are getting closer and closer, but they've also had their brief speed bumps in the road, and therefore nobody really able to get that consistency on the board at the moment. We're hoping to see somebody emerge as a contender in that regards to consistency tonight. Ilya Speaker there in P5 at 144 points. The best part of what is there 7 points clear of Justin Braggon in P6, and Braggon continued to build momentum much like Speaker. And then we have Jermaine Warren in P7 on 128 points. The best part of 24 points clear of John Wilding in P8, with Alexander Carver-Robbins and Spencer Torrance complete in the top 10. And it is my understanding, unfortunately, we will not be seeing Spencer Torrance take to the tarmac anymore in this series due to a schedule clash, but we wish Spencer Torrance all the best. Indeed, we've seen some fantastic racing from Spencer Torrance over the course of the season, and we hope he can rejoin us, I should say, in 2023. Now, outside the top 10, John Kroom and Albert Brand complete the Pro-Am division. And then as we come onto the Am class here in the overall championship standings, you can see that Jesse Jefferson Jr. on 129 points is 8 points clear of PG Christensen going into tonight. And both of these drivers having difficult days last time out in Canada. Neither one of them getting the big score they so desired, and both of them having major months, particularly at the turn 10 hairpin. Now, going into tonight, what that means for them is they have a lot of pressure on them to find that run of form they need, because otherwise the likes of Dan Ocaranza and Michael Zepp will continue to close the distance down. You can see that Ocaranza on 150 points, only 1 clear of Michael Zepp in P4, but both of them are building form, and Zepp in particular really took the fight to the field last time out at Circuit Charles Villeneuve, with some brilliant battling for the QZ Motorsports driver, particularly against his own teammate Adrian Fedorowski, who's on 97 points there in P5, only 1 point clear of Joe Nagy. Then we have Glenn Bratton P7 ahead of Mark Senegal P8, Kevin Lizarazo P9, and Samuel Corrada continue to build that form, having only joined us as of Road Atlanta in round number 4. He's now up to P10 on 70 points, and there's no stopping him, it seems. Lee Porter P11 ahead of Roger Ganesh P12, with Jose Mari there at P13, almost double the points of Blake Phillips at this point in time, with Stefan Chalafu P15, Braden Melly P16, and then P17 there, albeit a bit of an error on our tower. It does look as though there we've got some ghost driver in P17, but P17 actually goes to the driver listed as P18, Sahaj Padiyar there, who is making his debut in the series as of tonight. I'm very pleased to announce, currently with 0 points to his name. Now, as we come onto the Cup Championship standings going into tonight, perhaps this is the one that's more pressing for all of our drivers. We can see that in the Pro Division, Jason Landry leading on 95 points, 13 points clear of John Lauzon in P2. It looks as though it's going to go the way of Landry. All he needs to do today is bring home a strong finish, and he'll take the America's Cup in the Pro class. Lauzon on 82 points joint with Jordan Butler, and you can imagine some sparks are going to fly between the two of them there, with Luke Burtenshaw in P4 and 78 points, hoping, of course, to have that great result last time out of Canada and bolster his score and really take the fight to Landry, but it wasn't to be, and it has cost him very dearly, and he's going to need a huge turn of form whereby he'll need the win tonight and for things to go against his opponents in order to bring home the America's Cup. Then we have Edwin Offred in P5 with 58 points, a sizable portion clear of Tanner Dibble, but not having the results he's wanted so far, and you can imagine that these two will be looking to have a strong run tonight to focus more on their overall championship rather than their America's Cup campaign, with Ben Rose and Shane Larson yet to score in the America's Cup. We then come to the Pro-Am class, and we can see here the difference is quite sizable. In the Pros, we've got a runaway leader. In the Pro-Ams, we've got two drivers on 85 points. It's James Logsdon versus Milan Harris, and it's going to go all the way down to the wire. Now, the run of form would dictate that James Logsdon is the favourite, given his run of form over the course of the first five rounds. But at the same time, Milan Harris has not been sleeping on the situation and has continued to take the fight to Logsdon. It has closed that pace delta. Fernando Takahashi in P3 on 69 points, 3 clear of Matthew Smith, with Justin Bragadette a further 2 points behind in P5. We now have a sizable gap to Alexander Carver-Robbins in P6, ahead of Ilya Speaker, Jermaine Warren, Albert Brand and John Wilding completed the top 10, and John Krim and Spencer Torrance completed the rest of the standings. And then coming on to the AM class, we can see that Samuel Corran currently leading by 6 points ahead of Adrian Fedorowski, with Dan Okoranza there a further 12 points back in P3 on 52 points, 1 clear of Jesse Jefferson Jr., and it does look as though if Corran's able to put together a strong performance today, he will take the America's Cup in the AM class, but it's easier said than done. Glenn Bratton P5 on 50 points, much like PG Christensen, but ahead based on result countback, with Blake Phillips, Lee Porter, Joe Nagy and Michael Zepp completing the top 10. And then we have Kevin Lizarazo, Stefan Chalafu, Mark Senegal, Braden Melly, Jose Amari, Roger Ganesh, and also Sahaj Padia completing the America's Cup standings. But now we come onto our circuit quickly for today, because we are close to going racing very shortly, and it is the Autódromo José Carlos Pace, located in Sao Paulo, Brazil, known more colloquially to most of us as the Interlagos circuit, which is the nickname given to the circuit because it is between two man-made lakes, of course translated Interlagos into between lakes in particular. This 15-corner circuit, as we can see from the circuit map provided to us by simracingwiki.com, is one that I think a two-dimensional diagram does not quite describe. It is a circuit with a major series of elevation changes. From the start-finish straight, particularly at turn number 15, all the way down to turn 4 and turn 5, the elevation change is so severe indeed, it feels as though you're racing on two different circuits that have been joined together perhaps. But the key feature of this circuit, bar its elevation changes, is the fact that this circuit is made up of a wide variety of corners which are in a serpentine layout, and you can see the run down the start-finish straight all the way out to the centre S at turns 1 and 2, and then coming into the Curva del Sol at turn number 3 is a fast-flying sequence, so it's left, right, left, all the way through, then down the Retta Aposta, which is one of our long straights all the way down to turn number 4. As our drivers make their way through the double left to turns 4 and 5, they go to the lowest point of the circuit before starting to charge uphill into turns 6 and 7, the double right-hander, which takes them up into the first of many a major hairpin at turn number 8. Survive that, they go to turn number 9, coming through Pinheiro chicane, and well, not chicane, I should say Pinheiro curve, and as they make their way out of turn 9, up into turn number 10, the slightest corner in the circuit, turn number 10, they'll find as they go through the right-hander there, they'll need to get on the throttle nice and early to charge through Magulo Corner at turn number 11, they'll head into Junkau at turn number 12, the left-hand right-angle corner, which will see them need to get on the power absolutely frivolously, because then it's all uphill through turn 13, 14 and 15 to complete the lap and do it all again. But it's better to see it in person rather than just on a circuit diagram. I think words only begin to describe about 10% of what this circuit is all about. Now, as for our race rules for today, we can see here that because this is a feature race round, there's a slight change in the rules. In terms of setup, we have the same rules as always, which is drivers shall run the iRacing sprint setup for all rounds, which means this is a fixed setup series. Our drivers are not allowed to tweak any of the setup of the car other than the brake bias, as I'm to understand it, and car fuel loads have been restricted to 51% for all rounds, which forces a pit stop in this race. Now, in the feature race, the grid shall be set as a reverse grid based on the Drivers' Championship standings following the previous round, so from round number 5 at Canada. Classes shall start in the order of Pro Pram and AMs, so the pros ahead of the Primes and the Primes ahead of the AMs, with a 5-second gap being maintained between each class to ensure safety in the run to turn number 1. Drivers who've yet to score championship points shall start at the back of their class to avoid them jumping to the front of the class with no points on the tally, and race starts under manual double file rolling start with the formation being held up to the green flag. Each driver has 2 fast repairs available in case they are involved in incidents and need to get back into the race, and a driver shall receive a drive-through penalty if they accumulate 25 or more instant points. And as we said only moments ago, given the 51% fuel tank load, there is a mandatory pit stop in which drivers must take on fuel, but they are not expected to change tyres. And given the fact the race duration is 40 minutes, we are not expecting anyone to come into the pits unless they flat spot a puncture a tyre to take on a fresh pair of boots. But that's enough rules, regulations, and everything else in between. Let's take you back to the circuit as our drivers are getting ready to go. And, well, let's introduce here Sahaj Padia as he makes his way on out there of turn number 10 in the Porsche 911 for QZ Motorsports, running the Antarctica flag there. Indeed, he joined us remotely today, and as he makes his way up towards turn number 12 right now, welcoming on his debut. And how will he get on in the AM class, which has proven to be a very feisty class? There's no doubt about that. Can he pull off a great result here, given the fact there will be a lot of pressure on him to start off his championship campaign rather well? Well, good luck to him, and we look forward to seeing how he goes come the checkered flag. And of course, everybody will be absolutely itching to go. And speaking of itching to go, the fastest man on circuit, as you can see behind Padio right now, is Milan Harris here, the Rockefeller Racing driver, the 169 machine, made his way into turn number 1. And the Pro-Am driver, the fastest of everybody in this final practice warm-up session. Is that a sign of something to come today? Could we see our first overall winner being someone other than a pro-class driver? Well, we'll have to wait and see. But Harris definitely flying high here in this final practice session. The checker flag is out of it. We just caught it in time. And now we're about to go ready into the racing. As we see here, everyone transitions into the pit lane and they'll shortly making their way to the grid. So as our drivers get ready to go onto the grid, you will have to ignore the time out on the left-hand side of your screen. Unfortunately, we cannot walk you down through the grid, given that it is a manually set grid rather than one set through qualifying. That is a limitation of the replay file we have available to us. Indeed, that's the way the iRacing replay files work. But as all of our drivers start to line up, they'll line up for a partial formation lap or a short formation lap, however you want to describe it, whereby our drivers will make their way around from turns 6 and 7. They will not be doing the full lap to warm up their tyres. And, well, you can see here already the majority of our AMs in position, including Samuel Crad from Team Bear Pope in the 260 machine, of course the favourite to take the America's Cup here today. We can also see a little bit further up there in the midfield of the Pro-Am group, it'll be Ilya Speaker for Rockefeller Racing. And that towards the front, unless I'm very much mistaken, given that we've only got 7 of our Pro-Am drivers in attendance. I think Albert Brand is having some technical difficulties with the car. Hopefully they are able to get the Lamborghini Huracan Evo GT3 out there. Otherwise we will have a slightly diminished Pro-Am class. But a lot of the field is made up of AM drivers. But we do look all the way towards the front. And you can see here the gridding process is already complete. And Sahaj Padiyar has not taken to the grid. And neither has Albert Brand. In fact, Padiyar has jumped to the pits, deciding to go for a pit lane start. Well, that's fair enough. But as our drivers get underway here, we can see on the front row it is going to be the combination of John Lauzon and Tanner Dibble for what is the Pro class. Meanwhile, in the Pro class, it will be the pairing of John Kroom and Alexander Carver-Robbins who line up together on that front row, given already that 5-second space to the pros. And then in the AM class, it will be the pairing of Stefan Chalavu and Samuel Karan who line up together and launch their way over the front line there. Well, it's all to play for. Karan, to be fair, in a very favourable position, given that his overall championship position puts him on the second row of what is there, that AM class, and therefore he could try and make an early run on the likes of Lee Porter and Chalavu and get his way into the lead of the class and roll off into the distance. But whether he's able to do that or not, that will be the big challenge for him. But indeed, everyone will be looking to get an absolutely brilliant launch off the line, and this man in particular will need to get a great launch, because otherwise, if Lauzon does not, then Tanner Dibble will be looking to go around him very early on. But as they make the way up towards what is the turn at 12 corner of Junkao, we can see the safety car just ahead. They'll be giving themselves a bit of space to the safety car, but shortly our pro drivers will be going racing, and it'll be John Lauzon who dictates when we go at the green. Do bring out the dashboard then the bottom right to give an idea of when he has gone. We can see there's going to be a little bit delayed start once they let the safety car come into the pit lane, but it will be Lauzon who dictates when we go for 40 minutes of racing. And as they gradually make the way along, we do wait for him to put his foot down. It's lights out and away we go, and there's John Lauzon gets the field underway with the Pro Class heading down to turn number 1, and you can see behind the Primes all feisty as well, but into the braking zone they go. It's side-by-side traditional, but meanwhile further back in the Pro Class we've got 3 wide into turn 1 then. That's Krug, Speaker and Carver Robbins, and we can see Krug up the inside, Evan Rockefeller Racing defending hard, but then Speaker going around the outside to inside through 1 and 2, gets the move done very early to Speaker. That was very brave stuff, but it continues a bit further back here as we can see that John Wilding meanwhile battling side-by-side with Carver Robbins as they make the way down the rest of Aposta and all the way out towards turn number 4 they go. Meanwhile, Paddy comes out of the pit lane towards the front of the AM class as they make the way out of the braking here into turn number 4, and Wilding here holding Milan Harris at bay, but Carver Robbins holding around the outside and getting the move done. Meanwhile, in the AM class, well, Coran's had an absolutely brilliant launch and jumped all the way out towards the front of the class as they make the way over. In fact, Samuel Coran really leading hard now as Stephen Chalafoon behind now. I think it's been jumped a little bit, and Lee Porter holding in there as well for P3 in the AM class as they make the way through turn 6 and 7 and up towards turn number 8. But ahead of them, we can see Carver Robinson still battling side by side with Logston, but more importantly in the Pro Class right now, Tanner Dibble's found his way already past John Lauzon, and as they make the way out of turn 10 and through 11, now Lauzon's got the pressure of fellow BMW M4 driver Jordan Butler on his backside as they make the way on down the round and up towards turn number 12. Butler goes a little bit hot there. You can see just a little bit more temperamental with the brakes compared to Lauzon, and as they make the way out of turn number 12, it's now the drag race all the way round to the start finish line. But further back, Mark Senegal battling hard here with Joe Nagy as they make the way under braking. Mark Senegal in the green-black Ferrari versus Nagy in the Porsche, and Senegal there, a bit of a turn. I'm not sure there was contact, but Senegal definitely spinning at turn number 12, getting the power down a little bit early. But as we look to the front of the field, after one lap, it's Dibble who leads ahead of John Lauzon P2, John Butler P3, followed by Luke Burtenshaw P4, Jason Landry P5. They're your pros, followed by your pros of Ilya Speaker P6, then John Krug P7, Alexander Carver Robbins P8, James Logston P9, John Wilding P10, Milan Harris P11, and then you have your AMs over Samuel Cran in P12, followed by Stephen Chalafoon P13, and Lee Porter P14, then Joe Nagy P15, ahead of the rest of the field of Adrian Fedorowski, Justin Jameson Jr., and then we do have Glenn Bratton, Dan Ocaranza, followed by Mark Senegal, and will Senegal into the pits after that spin. I think there was some contact, in fact it may have been Netco contact, but regardless there's some damage to the car and he's not happy with the state of the car, and Zepp having a very poor start. We can see in a quite heavily mangled front end Audi R8 LMS. Zepp right now not having the great start that he wanted today to build on the runner form all the way back at Canada a week ago, but still to the demise of some, others have risen to the occasion, and that driver in particular is his teammate from QZ Motorsports of Adrian Fedorowski right now, who's found his way up into P5 in the class, P16 overall, and is right now trying to hunt down Joe Nagy, who's had a strong start, but after battling with what was the Mark Senegal earlier on the previous lap, I think, but Joe Nagy right now, he's had a little bit of the steam taken out of his engine, and Fedorowski is going to try and capitalise on it as soon as possible as they make the way out to turn number 9 and up towards 10. As they come into the braking zone here, we look from them back up to the primes, in particular Carver Robbins, who's got a huge amount of pressure for James Logston behind, and we ride on board here with James Logston from Team Bearpo as they come out to turn number 12. Now, of course, it's Mercedes versus Mercedes here. It's the two 6.3 litre V8 engines going toe-to-toe as they make their way through turns 13, 14 and shortly through 15. But as they head up towards the timeline, of course, the change for these two drivers is the fact that do they try to fuel save off of one another or do they push hard? I think for Logston, he's got to go as he looks up the inside, because the problem for Logston in particular is Milan Harris, who'll be looking to try and take the fight to him in the America's Cup. And Logston here, of course, he needs to get to the front of this class if he wants to have any opportunity to be able to take the America's Cup. Meanwhile, Milan Harris does not have as much pressure, but that of course leads to the big question, which is how do you play this race from the perspective of do you go for the fuel save and therefore have a shorter pit stop, or do you go all in on the fuel and really try to gain those places early on and then risk a longer pit stop, as we see Logston there risking running wide, and that's going to give Wilding every excuse he needs to try and look around the outside as they make the way out of 5, and Logston has to give the space as Wilding goes up the inside, and in the Porsche they go side by side, but Wilding loses the rear end, and it's unfortunate he gets turned around, and Milan Harris they're just dodging the wayward Porsche, and Wilding, you could see what he tried to do, but I think a bit too much power coming into turn number 6, and that was his lot as he returns to the circuit. But it's going to be a very painful and slow return as he makes his way uphill. You can see there the scale of essentially the elevation into turn number 8 alone on that grass patch, and that is not nice to drive back onto, because you've got to get the car essentially going up the slope and keep it stable. Meanwhile, keeping things stable, we see Jordan Butler here, he's still got the pressure of Luke Burtenshaw in the battle for GT3 overall, and also the Pro class as they make the way through turns 13 and into 14 shortly. But the problem for Butler here is that he's not close enough to be with Lauzon, and he needs the toe Lauzon, I think, to keep Burtenshaw at bay, because what we've seen so far over the course of this season is that Porsche, when it is in the zone, particularly when Burtenshaw is driving it, it absolutely flies. When I say that, he almost flies a bit wide, a bit of understeer, and Landry's going to cut on through as Landry goes around the outside. As they make the way on down there, Burtenshaw with a rare error costing him position and costing him a key one versus Jason Landry, and the Lamborghini driver here just playing it very calm and collected as he makes his way down the Retro Posta up towards turn number 4 once again. But looking up from our pros down towards our AMs, here's Lee Porter, who right now on the charge chasing after Stefan Chalafu, but a little bit further back Adrian Fedorowski here looking for the move around the outside. Well, now that is going to be very brave to try and go all the way on the outside and across what is the runoff area there, the Curva del Sol to go for the move versus Joe Nagy. But you can see Fedorowski has definitely got the bit between his teeth, and we're not going to say that's a bad thing, that's a fantastic thing for the Fedorowski driver as they make the way all the way through turn number 5. Indeed, the QC Motorsports driver here absolutely going for it left, right, centre, and that's what you need as he makes his way up into turn 6 to 7, but roll his way through the right-hander here. You can imagine that he might want to calm it down just a little bit in case he frustrates those tyre temperatures, and we do know it's quite hot here today, quite a high ambient temperature, and that is going to pose a risk, particularly for our mid-engine rear-wheel drive machines. Those rear tyres could light up very easily, and when they're overheated, they offer very little grip and they start to scrub off a huge amount of life. But right now Fedorowski staying very close to Joe Nagy, and to be fair to Joe Nagy, whilst he does not have perhaps the pace Fedorowski, he's not showing any signs of being phased by the pressure behind him. He's running it very smart and simple for Rockefeller Racing as he heads into turn number 12 once again. Current rolling through, we see a little bit further back there Jesse Jemison Jr. in P16. He's had a good start to his race, to be fair, not really gained too much, not really lost too much either. The graphic at the bottom right corner of your screen said he's lost 12 places. That is erroneous. That's where the limitations, of course, as we said earlier with regards to the iRacing replay file. But Jesse Jemison Jr. right now keeping it smart, as we've heard off camera that Albert Brand, who started from the pit lane, well, Albert Brand's been involved in an incident, has had to jump to the pits. He's back down in P23, and I think they've had to actually retire the car due to the incident that he's been involved in. But meanwhile, without incident here, Stefan Chalafu under pressure from Lee Porter as they make the way out of Curva del Sol, turn number 3 and down the Retro across the straight once again. Chalafu really feeling the pain now as they come charging down the brakes. Meanwhile, goodness me, what on earth has happened there to Alexander Carver Robbins, who's in a turn? Well, something has gone wrong for Carver Robbins. He was sent to the wall there at turn number 4. I believe there may have been a bit of an incident involving James Logston and Milan Harris in that. We're not 100% sure. We can't take a look back at that, but what we can see is that James Logston now in P3 in the Prime class here has got Milan Harris right behind him as we ride on board the gearbox of the Team Bepo driver. Now making the way down through turn number 9 here, battling for P8 overall, P3 in the Prime class as they come out. So you may be asking, how do you tell who's Pro, who's Prime and who's AM? Well, you can see the colorations of the time on the left hand side, the coloured stripes. Those who are blue are Pros, those who are green are Primes, and those who are orange are AMs. And right now you're looking at two of our Prime drivers, two of our finest Prime drivers, if we're allowed to distinguish between them, which we shouldn't really. And as they make the way into turn number 12, giving everyone that is absolutely shuffling on the great show, there's no doubt about that. But Logston right now really trying to keep Harris at bay here, and Milan Harris now started to turn it up slightly, and I think that Milan Harris has been waiting for some time to be able to put the pressure on Logston as they make the way out onto another lap very shortly. 8 minutes complete, we've still got 80% of the racing to go, and as they make the way across the timeline here, Logston definitely feeling the threat as they head down to the brain zone. Milan Harris on the brakes, does he go for it? No, he does not. He waits once again as we hear Carver Robbins is into the pit after that moment earlier on. But you can see here just how close Harris is really riding the back of Logston. And a small mistake there from Harris, taking a bit too much curb out of 2, sending the car understeering onto the curbing at turn number 3. And that's not what you want when you're running this close. But you can see they had to back out. But Logston right now puts the car in the middle of the road and says to Harris, if you're going to go for it, I'm going to have to make you go all the way down the inside and compromise both our lines. But literally off camera there, that's John Kroom with an unexpected turn at turn number 4. He's gone round, and that means Logston now is battling for P2 in the Prime class. P7 overall, and Harris continues to push him hard as they make the way through 6 and 7. Now as they make the way into the braking zone for turn at number 8 here, I think for Harris at this point, and given that Ilya Speaker is an outsider on the America's Cup, I think Harris is just going to focus on putting that pressure on Logston. Goes a little bit deep at turn number 9. Now can he hold that inside line into turn number 10? Harris is going to try and look round the outside here as they battle on the brakes. And of course these Mercedes prone to a lot of understeer natively, but then again, Logsdon could use that to his advantage by really extending that braking zone on that inside line. That's exactly what he's done. He's made Harris have to go the long way round, and Harris is not able to find his way on through, but Logsdon really under huge pressure as he loses the rear of the car, and Milan Harris comes on through to take P2 in the Pro-Am class at this early stage, and that could be vital in deciding the America's Cup here today in the Pro-Am class as he makes his way up to speed, and Logsdon has lost out massively as he returns to speed, but it's gone so wrong for the American as he makes his way back up onto the start-finish straight here, dropping all the way down to P15. John Wilding just behind, and when he has to come into pits as John Kroom is, I think Logsdon's coming in because he's going very slowly, and as they make their way through, Logsdon has to come into the pits. Meanwhile, John Wilding picking up some places with Kroom and Logsdon coming on in, and suddenly John Wilding's error earlier on does not seem as punishing as he makes one to another lap, now P3 in the Pro-Am class. But meanwhile, whilst all that was happening, we have Samuel Coran here as the cameraman quickly pans on round, and the Team Bearpoke driver here leading in the AM class right now, Stefan Chalafu right behind, and we ride on board here with Chalafu, the middle of the pack racing driver, who is really showing a huge turn of pace here today. Didn't quite have the pace, of course, at Giles Villeneuve, and I think, of course, ended quite early given the incident that happened at the World Champions in that sprint race, but right now he's having a much calmer race here, and when I say calmer in terms of he's been allowed to evolve into the race distance, and as he evolves here, Chalafu is proven to be a huge thorn in the side of Coran as they make their way out of turn number 8 down towards 9, roll the way through the left-hander here, and you can see that Chalafu using the extra rotation the Porsche naturally has with the engine being over towards the rear axle, mid-engine rear-wheel drive compared to the BMW having the engine in the front engine wheel-wheel drive, and as he makes his way out of turn number 10, a small error there in the dirty air, just understeering a little bit wide coming out of 10, heading into 11 now, but Chalafu definitely feeling dicey here, but the problem is he needs to try and calm it down, temper it a little bit, because whilst it's great to run this close, if he continues to run this close, as we see there a bit more understeer creeping in on exit at turn number 12, what you'll find is that front end of the car starts to overheat considerably, particularly with regards to those front tyres, and also he gets that nasty waft of dirty air off of the back of the BMW in front, and that's only going to make the car want to straight line on, or understeer as we call it. We turn the steering wheel, but it only goes straight rather than rotate, and when it does not want to rotate, that could be where the Porsche finds its downfall. But as they make their way on to another lap here, you can see that Coran himself also outbraked himself slightly into turn number 1. Definitely feeling a lot of pressure here as they make their way through, and this is giving me a bit of a recollection, if you will, of what happened at Road Atlanta between Samuel Coran and Blake Phillips, where we saw the two of them go toe-to-toe for the best part of 10 minutes at Road Atlanta for the win in the AM class, where both of them were pushing each other to the limit. Well, today it's the Coran and Chalafu show in the AM class, but let's not count out Lee Porter either, who's only sitting 6/10 off the back of this, so you can see Lee Porter there, in fact, as we look to the exterior cameras. They head out of turn number 5 and up the hill towards turn number 6, and also Joe Nagy is closed up to the back of this battle. Fell off earlier on in the battle for what was P3 in the class. He's P4 in class, P11 overall, but he's now starting to creep in there, and I think this is where the pace of the race is dropping away for the AM drivers. Coran makes a mistake, and Chalafu's made to look around the outside here at turn number 9. But there's no way through there. You've got to have a huge amount of run. The driver on the inside's got to really be absolutely frightened. And speaking of frightened, well, I think Coran there might have been a little bit frightened by Chalafu going in, but Chalafu overcooks it as well, and it means that Lee Porter comes on through. Now can Joe Nagy go all the way around the outside? This is going to be bold stuff for Joe Nagy, but he gets it done, and Chalafu with one daring dart to the inside, he gained 1 place, only to lose 2 in the process. And well, I think Coran's not going to be too happy about that one. I think he feels like that move came from way too far back. Well, I can tell you one thing, it may have been sent and the stamp was on the card, but I don't think it was first class in the end. If anything, it's really cost the pair of them a lot, and Chalafu right now is immediately trying to come on back versus Joe Nagy. They're going to make it 3 wide into turn 1. It's going to be Nagy in the middle. Coran backs out in the end, and Chalafu also backs out, but look at Coran coming back up the inside here versus Chalafu, and he gets the move done, returning to P3 in the class, and as they make the way through turn 2 and into 3, right now it has returned to normal for the pair of them in terms of Coran versus Chalafu in positioning, but they are still 2 places down on where they think they deserve to be. Meanwhile, just coming out the pits at the front end of this group, John Malzoni's taken an early pit stop. I presume that's all part of his strategy to go early on the pit stop here and go for an undercut on the field, but the Blue Flag Motorsports driver has just about survived getting out ahead of this AMPAC. I would only hate to imagine what would have happened if he'd come out in amongst it in terms of his race. And speaking of races going wrong, oh goodness me, Lee Porter connecting with Joe Nagy, and also Chalafu losing the rear of the car into turn number 6. Well, goodness me, the Porsche drivers, they're all in sequence. Well, Joe Nagy being the exception, he was collected in driving on through. I think he didn't have time to react to what had happened in front of him, but it's all gone wrong. Lee Porter, in fact, with that contact with Joe Nagy, has actually survived that moment, and he is still the leader of the M class here. It's absolutely crazy at Interlagos, and as we said earlier on in the pre-show, this circuit is no stranger to drama when it comes to couple of championship deciding races, and we have just seen a lot of drama in a very short period of time as Lee Porter now in a wounded Porsche is trying to hold off a fast charging Porsche in the hands of Adrian Federowski as they come up the hill through turns 13 and 14 and make the way round towards 50, and Federowski is going all in here. He's going around the outside now, I think, for Lee Porter. He's coming in. No, he's backed off, in fact, and as they make the way all the way down towards turn number 1, Federowski is now your new AM leader, but look at Cran on the inside of what is their Lee Porter. On the brakes they go, and Samuel Cran gains the place. I think Lee Porter 9, he can't fight it too hard given the wounds he's wearing on that Porsche, but Cran is now back up into P2 in the class. Lee Porter's gone straight on now. I think so it's broken something on Lee Porter's car. He's had to jump to the pits, literally as he came out of 2. I think the suspension's collapsed on the front of the car. And that's an absolute disaster for Lee Porter. Indeed, it is for so many of the AM drivers all involved in that drama on the previous lap and going on to the start of this one. But for Adrian Federowski right now, he must be thinking to himself, thank you very much, guys. But now, of course, for Federowski's got one big question. Can he hold off Samuel Cran all the way towards the end, or will the Team Bear Poke driver find a way to undermine the lead of the QZ Motorsports driver? Well, we've got plenty of time to tell. Still 25 minutes plus also the final lap of the race. But meanwhile, a little bit further back, I can tell you what all this has been going on. Coming out of the pits now is Joe Nagy for Rockefeller Racing, but he has dropped all the way down to P9 in the M class, P18 overall. And now he's got to try and hunt down, first and foremost, Glenn Bratton in front of him, as we see the BMW M4 driver here running in the privateer M-Power machine, starting to build a bit of momentum and trying to chase down Michael Zepp in front of him in the Audi. But as he comes on out there of turn 4 and into 5, I think Bratton's going to be looking more towards his rearview mirror shortly, given Nagy is looking fast already as they make the way on out. But it's not just about the AM drivers here, it's also about the pros, and we can see that Jordan Butler here running P2 overall and P2 in the pro class has the pressure of Landry behind him, as the Lamborghini driver of Landry looking to try and steal that America's Cup by gaining more places. And as he makes his way into turn number 4 here, Luke Burtenshaw 1.7 seconds behind, so Landry still holding firm here, and it does look as though Landry's going to pick up a major haul in the overall championship as well versus Burtenshaw as they head up the hill. We are hearing that Joe Nagy has already passed Glenn Bratton off camera for P16 overall, but our focus right now is on the battle for P2 overall between what is Butler and Landry as they head under braking into turn number 5. Into turn number 8, I should say, getting my numbers slightly wrong there, but as they make the way through turn number 9 now, we can see here Landry definitely staying very close. In fact, we're right on board with the Canadian as he heads into turn number 10. And as the car slides its way on in, you can definitely see that Lamborghini looking very composed right now, much like the BMW, interestingly enough. And the BMW having a reputation for being a very stable car initially. The Lamborghini as well, despite being at mid-engine rear-wheel drive. But as they make their way through turn number 12, you can definitely see Landry trying to brake a little bit earlier and trying to get an earlier apex to offset that dirty L off the back of the BMW. But the problem is, as they make the way through 13 and 14, you can see how the BMW there, despite the slipstream being afforded to Landry, it just absolutely flies on the accelerator all the way up to top gear, and this is where Landry has to try and offset it. He's got to mitigate this by having a strong middle sequence of the laps, so particularly the run from turn 4 all the way through to turn number 12, he's got to have the stronger runners. We see there, and that's why it's deceiving. Did Butler just slightly lock up under braking there and actually have a bit of an oversteer moment into turn number 1? I think that rear slightly came loose, but he's brought it back together, and Landry here just staying within 6 tenths. I think Landry might be thinking about, can he make the jump in the pits rather than forcing the issue on circuit, given the fact that Burtenshaw is 9 tenths back and showing no signs of disappearing any time soon. Or as they come through turn number 4, you can see Butler going a little bit wide. Is that enough for a slowdown? That would be the question. He has gained a little bit of time running wide, arguably, some would say, but it does look as though the gap has actually gained in the favour of Landry, as Landry closed up a bit more through turns 6 to 7, rolling his way through the double right and up into turn number 8. On the brakes they go, and nothing between the two of them right now. As meanwhile, Burtenshaw behind looks at this, I think he's thinking, how can I potentially pick up some places for Vector by RSR? Well, I think for Burtenshaw, he's got to play this one smart, and I wouldn't be surprised if he's doing some short shifting right now and trying to maintain that gap as a second to Landry and Butler, because that means if he can save a lot of fuel and stay within a second, he has a huge opportunity to make the double jump in the pit lane in terms of simply just having less time in the pits. Or perhaps he'll come in early or later to go for the undercut or the overcut on top of that. But as they come out to turn number 12, you can see Burtenshaw, they're just drifting a little bit wide. He's feeling that double dirty air in front of him of the BMW and the Lamborghini, and that's the thing he's also battling with. If he gets close, he's then got to worry about the fact the front end of the car is going to feel a lot less stable compared to what it would do in clear areas. Landry comes into the pits, interestingly, so Landry I think feels he can't make the move on Butler on circuit. He's going to have to do it in the pits, and now Burtenshaw's got the question, does he react come the end of this lap? Is he going to have to put in a qualifying lap now versus Butler? And meanwhile, as they make the way on around here, of course, Landry will be the big component. With Burtenshaw being out of the circuit, can Landry coming out and jump the pair? That is all going through the mind of all three drivers now. And well, Butler does have track position for now, but how long will it last for? Meanwhile, we look a little bit further back down the order, and we look in particular back to Samuel Coran here, who continues to chase down Adrian Fedorowski in the battle for the AM lead. Behind them, it's the brown driver, John Wilding, who's trying to recover as Fedorowski goes round, and that's very unfortunate for Fedorowski. Wilding there taking evasive manoeuvres, and Fedorowski losing the rear end at turn number 1, and that lead has fallen out of his hands, and it's Jesse Jamison Jr. now who also jumps ahead of him as well into P2 in the AM class, P10 overall, and the middle of the pack racing driver here having a very consistent run so far as we do get to the halfway point of the race come the end of the run down the Retro Aposta. But the American here from MOP right now really in the zone. Dan Ocaranza as well enjoying a strong race, the privateer, the Chilean, as he makes his way through turn number 4, and perhaps he can put some pressure on Fedorowski and get P3 in the AM class here today. You'd like to see it, I think, if you're a big fan of Ocaranza, and indeed he's looking for a big result in this championship, there's no doubt about that. And as he comes through turn 6 and 7, we look a little bit further back here to debutant of Padilla as he makes his way up the hill. He's got there John Kroom battling with him. Kroom, of course, in the prime class, so they're battling for overall position, not class position. But the QC Motorsport driver trying to make the move here versus the Rockefeller Racing Brown driver. He can't find it at the moment, but definitely starting to put the pressure on Kroom and try to say to him, you need to get a move on, otherwise I'll be making this move on you soon, as they head on out. Now, whilst all this happening, we do have James Logston in the pit lane, who after that incident earlier on, he has come on in and they're trying to repair the car, but I don't think they're going to get the car back out to the circuit, which means we do effectively have 4 retirements in this race, and it started with 23 drivers. We're going to, in fact, we've also had John Wilding just jump to the pits after a spin off circuit, off camera, but our 4 confirmed retirements so far are Michael Zepp, James Logston, Alexander Carver-Robbins and Albert Brand. Have we potentially got a 5th one on the cards of Wilding? We don't wish it on anyone. And meanwhile, speaking of wishing things, well, Fedorowski has found his way back past Jesse Jamison Jr. of camera. I think that was in the run out of turn number 12, but Jamison Jr. looks up the inside through 1. He can't quite get it done, and Fedorowski holds him at bay as they come running down. But look at Ocaranza as well, also there, waiting to pass the 216 drivers. They make the way through the Curva del Sol onto the Retro Aposta, and these 3 literally nose to tail at this point in time. And we are now coming into pit stop territory for most drivers, as we see the Jamison Jr. taking another look up the inside. Can't quite find the move, however, and I think as we see Fedorowski goes wide, well, that's going to cost him a bit of time there, there's no doubt about it. And as they make the way up the hill, Jamison Jr. feeling confident, I think, in the car. He's not really putting a foot wrong. And if he continues this run of form, I think Jamison Jr. could be on the cards for a P2 in class today. He's just got to keep the pressure on Fedorowski, and meanwhile Ocaranza will also try and follow on through. Also into the pit stop, look at my commentary box window, is Glenn Bratton. He's come on in from what was at the time, unless I'm very much mistaken, P15. So he's come on in for his mandatory pit stop, and he'll be serviced very shortly. But as we continue to watch here the battle for P2, we see Jamison Jr. get a little bit of oversteer coming out of turn number 10, just a little bit too early on the power. And as they make the way down for 11, that understeer now that creeps in the downhill run through turn 11. Well, that is going to be a car now that's going to feel a little bit foreign to him in terms of one minute it wants to oversteer, next minute it wants to understeer, and now he's got to calm it down and get it on the clean steer as they make the way through turns 13 and 14. We can see Ocaranza staying close as they come charge up towards turn number 15. Through left hand they go. Will either one peel into the pits? No. So it's going to be Ocaranza versus Jamison Jr. as they make the way down towards turn number 1 on the brakes. Jamison Jr. defends on the inside. Ocaranza then made to wait a little bit longer, but this is bringing Chalafoud back into the mix. You can see there the Porsche, the bright red MOP Racing Porsche, Stefan Chalafoud from Canada, also getting closer and closer with 17 minutes to go, but no sign of any of these 3 drivers looking to defect to the pit lane yet. Meanwhile, a bit further back in the AM class, Joe Nagy trying to put the pressure on Mark Senegal here. We haven't really seen too much of the Ferrari driver since his early incident, but right now the privateer continues to try and push on, holding on to P7 in the AM class, P15 overall, but he has got the fast Porsche behind him as they make the way on through. And I think Senegal here peeling, or no, he's not coming into the pit surely because he's already been to the pits once. And he makes his way across that timeline. Nagy there being made to wait as they head into turn number 1. As they make the way under braking, you see that Nagy gets in very close. We ride on board here with the Rockefeller Racing driving the 207, and and as he makes his way through the left-hand at turn 3, he's going to have a good run here, and I think Senegal's got to be conscious of the fact he's in vulnerable territory. Will Joe Nagy look for the move? Senegal defends slightly off-centre. It's going to be a battle on the race. Will Nagy dive to the inside? No, he waits. He's going to wait for later in lap, and Senegal there goes a little bit deep off apex, and that's going to cost him the run through 4 and 5. With Nagy needs an opportunity. This is it. It's coming, because he'll have to look around the outside. Senegal's going to defend in the middle of the road here. Nagy's going to be made to wait a little bit longer, but every time Senegal puts the car off racing line, that is going to cost him the run through these corners. Although I say that, Senegal gets a fantastic run through turns 6 and 7 as they come down into turn number 8. No change at the moment between them, but meanwhile, speaking of changes, Chalafu versus Dan Ocaranza here in the background as they make their way into turn 1. Ocaranza on the inside in the Mercedes, Chalafu in the Porsche on the outside here. Ocaranza's going to try and hang Chalafu out to wide, but we can see that Chalafu gets it done, albeit loses the rear slightly off of the apex curve of turn number 1. That's not going to stop him. He's powered through it, and Chalafu right now definitely determined to get back on to the AM podium. He's up to P4 in the AM class. His next target will be Jameson Jr., who's ahead as they make their way down towards turn number 4. Meanwhile, we look back to the battle here between Sahaj Padilla and John Kroom. It's Kroom on the inside of your pitch here as they make their way into turn number 4, and Padilla's going to go around the outside. The AM driver makes the move on the Pro-Am, but he goes very, very wide. I think he's going to have to give the place back with that, and Kroom retakes the place. Then Padilla taking a lot of enthusiasm into turn number 4, but taking a bit too much speed with it as they make the way into 6, and Kroom stays ahead for the time being. Meanwhile, Joe Nagy has just made his way up the inside of Mark Senegal. He's now up into P7 in the M class, P15 overall. But meanwhile, the bigger pressing issue here is that we have a pit stop, and it is for Tanner Dibble, who comes on in from, at the time, what I do believe was P2 in the Pro class. He's made his way on in, and well, as he in fact, it was from the lead of the Pro class, I should say, correct myself there, but as he now makes his way on out, almost hitting the tyre barrier coming out of the pit lane. In fact, just a metal barrier, there's no tyres there, and as he makes his way on down out on the pit exit here, well, where is Jason Landry? There is Landry. So Landry, with that early pit stop, he has jumped ahead of John Lauzon. We can confirm that, but he has not got closer to Dibble too much. Dibble is still 5 seconds up the road, and Landry is stuck behind Milan Harris. Now, Harris is yet to pit, interestingly enough. Neither has Elias Speaker, who's ahead. So, well, Landry will be hoping that the two of them move out of the way sooner rather than later, but we still do have a good number of pit stops to go here with 14 minutes on the clock. So some drivers really trying to hang their first stints out as long as possible. So they've got a car that's really set to go sprinting right at the end, and Landry right now in quite comfortable territory, given the fact that he's still waiting to see how the rest of the Pro class pit. Although when I say comfortable territory, I don't think it's going to feel that much comfortable for very long, given the fact, well, Harris there goes a little bit deep. In fact, I think Harris lifting off slightly there, recognising there's no need to fight, and he's trying to go even longer as Harris if he's going to lift off along those lines. Meanwhile, a bit further back, we see here Chalafu battling for position with Jesse Jamison Jr. again as they make their way into turn 6 and 7. Jamison Jr. right now trying to hold on. He understeers a little bit wide of turn number 7. You can see Chalafu just has this ability to be right on the back of the driver in front and just be there like an absolutely horrible rash as they made their way down for turn number 9. That's not to discredit Chalafu. That's the pace he's brought to the table today, and I can imagine that Chalafu, after what happened in Canada a week ago, is looking to at least secure a podium, if not more, here in the AM class. He feels like he's come a long way over the course of the season. There's no doubt about that in terms of the pace he's been showing in the car, and that pace is being articulated here in the fact he is harassing everybody left, right and centre. Jamison Jr. goes a bit deep, and this is going to be the opportunity as we look to the blimp camera here. They make the way out of turn number 13 through 14, and as they charge their way all the way through, we jump over to the other blimp over the circuit. We've got Gran into the pit lane for the MOP racing driver here. Jamison Jr. heads on into the pit, and that releases Chalafu to head into P3 in the AM class, and Gran into the pit. So will be the case that Chalafu is now up to P2, albeit he's yet to take his mandatory pit stops. So really Chalafu is battling now with Jamison Jr. who's coming in. Daniel Carranza also stays out, and we've also got John Wilding into the pit lane, albeit I think Wilding's been in the pit lane for quite a sizable time now. I think that's another car retired, unfortunately, so 5 retirees. But meanwhile, just behind, we can see Kroom under pressure again from Padilla as they make the way down the Retro Posta. And well, whilst Padilla might be an Amdry, he's trying to battle with a Prime here as if it is for class position, and credit to him trying to take some points. To remember, they all score according to the same point sheet in terms of in the overall standings here. And as Padilla makes his way out to turn number 5 and up towards 6, he gains the place for the time being. As meanwhile, well, Jamison Jr. in the pit lane has just been repassed by Grant as he does leave the pit lane himself, and Mark Senegal also into the pit. Senegal has come into the pits from P16 as we see that John Kroom going a little bit slowly coming out of turn number 8, and I think having to nurse the car, almost oversteering on corner X, then getting the power down too early. But whilst all this is happening, up towards the front of the field, your race leader as it currently stands, albeit yet to take his mandatory pit stop, is DNA Motorsports' Jordan Butler, but you can see they're only 8 tenths behind and just lurking in the distance. Luke Burtenshaw for Vector by RSR, the number 71 driver here, definitely putting the pressure on it by being in the distance, and what we mean by that is he's not threatening in terms of being over the back of the driver in front, but I would imagine that Burtenshaw has been doing a lot of fuel saving over the course of the stint so far. Remember, they do have to come in for a mandatory fuel stop, but Burtenshaw's stop I think will be a very quick one compared to his peers in the class such as Jason Landry, Tanner Dibble and also John Lauzon. So right now we are expecting Burtenshaw and Butler to be coming in within the next 3 to 4 laps, if not sooner, given that these fuel tanks will not last the full 40 minutes. They will go sometimes as deep as about 32 minutes, given how much fuel saving a driver can do, and also the economy modes that these cars have available. But as the drivers coming round and down right now through turn number 11 into 12, we can see Jordan Butler literally holding position, although it goes a little bit deep, and that's also the tyre wear starting to accumulate. That is another factor as well, whereby given these tyres have been through 30 minutes of racing by the time these guys get to the start-finish line, the tyres still got a lot of grip available to it, but they have taken it out of its optimum zone. But both drivers stay out for another lap. They are pushing it to the utmost, and whilst it's only going to be a short pit stop, when you do come into this, you give the tyre an opportunity, a very brief one, to cool down, just get those temperatures a little bit down towards an ideal zone, and you go into the push once again. And speaking of coming on in, Ilya Speaker comes on in from P3. Your prime leader's made his way into the pits, and where will he come back on out? That'll be the big question, as Milan Harris, his teammate from Rockefeller Racing, also comes on in. It's the Harris Speaker leaders here coming on in, and well, where's your closest Pro-Am driver? It's John Kroom here, currently running P3. In fact, they are the only 3 drivers left in the Prime class, with all other Primes having retired, and it's going to be a Rockefeller Racing lockout on the Prime podium should all 3 bring it on home. Speaker's already making his way out to the pit lane. Milan Harris is now leaving his pit box, as meanwhile in the AM class, well, Adrian Fedorowski comes on in from the lead. Shafu, however, also comes on in, and also Ocaranza goes another lap. My goodness, the privateer here has been doing an absolute motherload of fuel saving, and well, that fuel load is definitely not being felt to be a pinching factor on the car as he makes his way down through turn 2 and into 3. How long is he going to go? And the thing is, as Adrian Fedorowski makes his way out the pit lane, where is Curran? Well, here is Curran coming through turn 1. It's going to be close as they make the way on down. I think the Team Bear Drive is going to be a bit further back, but he's going to go hunting as we see Fedorowski comes out of the pit lane. So Adrian Fedorowski, we believe, is your de facto leader in the AM class when all the pit stops are complete. But look at the gap between himself and Cran. You can see it there articulated on the screen. It is only 1.6 seconds between the two of them, and Cran now has his target, and he'll be going after it in the remaining 8.5 minutes of this race. Meanwhile, up front, into the pits at long last, they've gone as far as the fuel tank can go. Jordan Butler and Luke Burtenshaw both in together here, and it's now going to be the race of the pit stops with Dibble coming through, and there is Tanner Dibble to come through to retake the lead of the Pro class. What about Jason Landry? In fact, Landry going slow. I think Landry's been involved in an incident as he makes way. In fact, Landry has, and there's been a huge whack to the car. We're not sure where that's happened, but it's all gone wrong for Jason Landry. Meanwhile, Burtenshaw battling side by side with Butler coming out of the pit lane, and he's just jumped ahead of Jordan Butler as they come through. But look at John Lauzon. Lauzon comes on through to retake P2. It's going to be a 3-way battle for second place overall, and in the Pro class come the finish here, and my goodness, is going to go down to the wire. Butler up the inside of Burtenshaw. He goes through on the brakes, and the DNA Motorsports driver being bold gets it done, and Burtenshaw cannot retaliate coming out of 5. He's closed off there. The door is shut by Jordan Butler, and Butler right now thinking, I'm not losing to you, as they make their way through turns 6 and 7. But the problem for Butler is now he's going to have a huge waft of dirty air off the back of John Lauzon, and can he overcome that to take P2 overall and in the class come the finish, or will Burtenshaw have something to say? So I would imagine that Burtenshaw now will take the gloves off and simply say, right, the fuel saving's all done, I'm going hunting, as they make their way up into turn number 10. As they come on through, we do have a bit of a switch up further down in the AM class. We'll give you an update on that very shortly, but meanwhile, focusing on the here and now, we ride on board with Luke Burtenshaw running P4 overall and in the Pro class as he heads into turn number 12 and tries to find a way to upset the BMW pack in front of him of Butler and Lauzon as they make their way out of turn 12. Gives a much smoother exit by comparison, but you can just see the difference in acceleration between the Porsche and the BMWs as they make the way through 14 up towards turn number 15, and he's got the double draft as well. That will be aiding him and it's just not enough as that gap opens up more and more here down towards the start finish straight and then across into turn number 1. Onto the brakes they go once again for the 22nd time into turn 1, and this is where Burtenshaw guarantees to close up. You can see just coming through turns 1 and 2, a little bit of snap oversteer. They're coming down out of 2. The car in the dirt here, that aero balance was so sensitive on the Porsches. They made the way out of 3 and down towards 4, and you see Burtenshaw has lost out considerably, but meanwhile Lau's on here under major pressure from Jordan Butler, but Butler waits. He holds off there in the run towards turn number 4. I think Butler being wise to the fact that he's got to pick the right time to go for them. If he goes too soon, he may be held up, and then Burtenshaw gets in the mix, and that's what Lauzon will be looking to do. He'll be looking to back Butler into Burtenshaw as they make their way towards the end of this race. Meanwhile, further back, I can tell you that Ocaranza has made his way past Padilla as they make the way through turn 15 very shortly. And what we can see between the two of them here, that Ocaranza now trying to hunt down Stefan Chalafu. But after all the AM drivers have made their pit stops, it is Adrian Fedorowski who leads the class ahead of Samuel Kran. And then we do have Stefan Chalafu in P3, and then Dan Ocaranza, the focus of our cameraman's attention, in P4, followed by Padilla in P5. That's how the top 5 of the AM class currently stands, from P9 overall through to P13 overall, as they continue to press their way on around here in the closing stages of the feature race at Interlagos. But whilst all this is going on in the AM class, we look back to the Pro class where the big battle is happening, and we see Jordan Butler now under major pressure here from Luke Burtenshaw as they come through turn 14 and up towards 15. They charge nose to tail here, and Burtenshaw does not need a bigger opportunity to try and get this done. This is the closest he's ever going to get into turn 1 versus a BMW, and as they make the way under the brakes, did he go over it? No, he waits. I think he feels though he can get the run coming out of 2 and through 3, but you can see Lauzon struggling under braking through turn 1. The car just not giving him the rotation he needs, and as they make the way out of turn 3, the problem with this is the concertina effect that's triggered by Lauzon being a bit slow for the apex one means that Butler bunches up into Lauzon. In return, Burtenshaw just has no space to operate with, and he has to wait again. And now Burtenshaw has to think, right, I've got to try and pick off the two of them together or get one of them to make an error, because Lauzon is comfortable the rest of the lap. It's just turns 1, 2 and 3, which is where Burtenshaw wants to get this move done. You can see it, the way he's approaching the run to turn 1 is to set up the move out of turn 3 down towards 4, but then Lauzon gets this great run out of turn 6 and 7 and just holds Butler at bay, and now they get bunched up again. And also Burtenshaw here, he's got all the handling in the world, but the problem is there's no space to make the move versus Butler right now. He has to wait until he's got a lot more space to do it, because otherwise Butler will just simply seal the door, and then Lauzon runs off into the distance. Burtenshaw here really having to battle against the tide with 4 minutes plus the final lap to go as they make their way down through turn number 11. Of course, another thing to consider here is we have been on this set of tyres. All the drivers have used their set of tyres for 36 minutes. It's a hot track temperature, a hot ambient temperature. How much life is left in the tyres for each of them? And I would imagine Burtenshaw at this point, being in the double draft of 2 BMWs in front, he's not going to feel comfortable on that front end of the car. Those front tyres will be hot, and when they get very hot, they'll start to want to understeer a bit more. They just will not offer the grip anymore, and the life will be stripped out of them. Is Burtenshaw suffering with tyre temperatures? That's the big question as they make their way down towards turn number 1. This time as they come in, Burtenshaw not as close, and you can see it again. Butler gets the better run versus Lauzon coming through 2 and into 3. And I think Burtenshaw backing off to see if Butler can get the move done when he has not got the pressure of Burtenshaw behind him as much. But it does not seem to have articulated itself right now. You can see there Burtenshaw right now doing a little weave behind. I think he's just voicing a bit of frustration here in terms of he just cannot find a way to get close enough to force the move. And almost saying to Butler, I think, well, it's all yours, get it done, as they make their way through turns 4 and 5. Still 3 minutes to go, however, and anything can happen before that checkered flag. Meanwhile, in the Pro-Am class, well, after the pit stops, Ilya Speak here for Rockefeller Racing come to be leading the class by a margin of 5.2 seconds or so from teammate Milan Harris, who comes through turn number 4 and goes quite wide there. And then we have Jason Landry, who's come out the pits after a second stop with repair work done to the car using a fast repair P7. And then we do have the third Pro-Am driving, the last of Pro-Am drivers on circuit at the moment, with our Pro-Am class starting with 7 but 4 retirements in the class, and that is John Kroon from Rockefeller Racing. They are on course to making it a Rockefeller Racing podium in the Pro-Am class as they come on around here, should they all make it to the finish line. Of course, no commentator's curse being applied there. And speaking of making it to the finish line here, well, can Jordan Butler get the car home? No, goodness me, he goes a bit wide coming out to turn number 12, and that's all Burtenshaw needs to get the move done initially. But now the problem will be for Burtenshaw, it's It's a long run to turn one as Tanner Dibble's into the pit lane. It's late drama here as Dibble comes in from the lead of the race with 2 minutes to go, and that means now effectively John Lauzon is your race leader overall and in the Pro Class, and Burtenshaw, this has suddenly gone from a battle for P2 to a battle for the win of the race as they make the way down through turns 1 through to 3, and I say a battle for the win because Burtenshaw right now 1.2 seconds over John Lauzon, 2 more laps to go based on the time we have left in the race, and he will not want to lose out versus Lauzon ahead. Butler right now is continuing to mount pressure on Burtenshaw, but he's nowhere near close enough. I think if Burtenshaw just gets his head down and forgets about Butler, he could hunt this down right at the end if he's got the tyre life left to do so. Meanwhile, as he heads up the hill, Adrian Fedorowski has had to retire, I believe, unless I'm mistaken. No, in fact, he's not retired there. It's a brief disconnection in terms of latency for Adrian Fedorowski, but this is the battle for the win as well, and this is in P9 through to P10, and Fedorowski is only 1.3 seconds clear of Samuel Cran as they make their way down through turn number 1, and Fedorowski is having some connectivity issues very late in the race. Is that a sign of something to come right at the end when they've only got 2 laps remaining? I hope not, but anything can happen until the checker flag falls, especially at Interlagos. Are we going to see, and is that clock style moment, albeit we've got no rain, but I can tell you one thing, it is pouring with drama right now as we come to the very end of round number 6 in the GT3 Championship for 2022, but we look here from Samuel Cran all the way to race leader John Lauzon, right now having inherited the lead from Tanner Dibble, who's had to come in for that second pit stop and has come back out in P4 overall. With Dibble will be kicking himself, but meanwhile Lauzon has no time to kick himself. He goes onto the final lap, and it's Burtenshaw behind him by 6/10 of a second, and Lauzon here, well, he knows that his weakness is this opening sector of turns 1 through to 3. Once he's cleared this, if he's able to hold Burtenshaw off in the run to turn number 4, as we ride on board with Vector by Orosar's Burtenshaw as they make their way down the Retro Aposta for the final time, then Lauzon may be safe, but if you can count on anything, Burtenshaw is not going to give this up as they make the way into turn number 4. He is going to give it everything now as they make the way out of 4 into 5, and you can see the amount of effort that's going in. That gap has already come down from 6/10 at the start of the lap to 4/10 by the time they head into turn number 6. Now into the double right they go here, and as they make the way on through, of course Burtenshaw's got to battle against the dirty air in front as they go onto the anchors for turn number 8, and again Lauzon can just choose to be lazy with the car if he so decides. He can park the car on apex and really cost Burtenshaw the run out the corners if he gets too close, but Burtenshaw right now not too close, he's getting closer. 2.5 attempts, they break the way into turn number 10. Burtenshaw literally all over the back of Lauzon, but Lauzon there putting the car right on the apex and making it inconvenient, and as they head down through turn number 11 up towards 12, well, as they head into the left-hander Juncal corner, all Lauzon's got to do is get the drive out the corner and then just get his head down and wheel the car to the finish line. It's going to be a race to the line now. Lauzon's had a good run, but Burtenshaw's followed through. He's also got the tow. It's BMW power versus Porsche power as they make the way through turn number 14. The checker flag awaits the pair, and as they head to the line, who's it going to be who takes the win? Well, it's going to be John Lauzon, the Canadian from Blue Flag Motorsports, who holds off Luke Burtenshaw to the finish, and it is Jordan Butler who completes the overall and the pro podium ahead of Tanner Dibble, who in his frustration there in P4 he could add the win today, and it will be Ilya Speaker who takes the win in the Prime Class for Rockefeller Racing, P5 overall, ahead of teammate Milan Harris P6, who makes it P2 in the Prime Class, and then it will be a brief while before Jason Landry comes to the line, P7 there, the privateer in the Pro Class. A difficult day today for Landry, no doubt about it, and then it will be shortly John Kroom who comes on through behind Mark Senegal there, a lap down, who takes P16, but John Kroom takes P8 overall, but more importantly completes the Rockefeller Racing podium in the Prime Class. All 3 drivers there in the team on the podium, and then in the AM Class, well, here he comes. It is Adrian Fedorowski who takes the win in the AM Class, P9 overall for QZ Motorsports. He has held off in the end Samuel Cran, who has made it home P10 overall, P2 in the class, and then the best of the rest, the driver who starts off the best of the rest will be Dan Ocaranza here, P11, P3 in the AM Class. A superb drive to a podium for the Chilean ahead of Stefan Chalafu, who battled as hard as he could, but in the end has had to settle for P12 overall today. Sahaj Padilla on his debut, P13 and P5 in the AM Class, and then Joe Nagy, P14, and it'll be Jesse Jameson Jr., who towards the end of the race just fallen off the pace to a degree. As he comes on through, he'll be the last driver to complete this race on the lead lap. P15 overall, P7 in the AM Class. He comes to the timeline, he takes his checkered flag, but what a brilliant race, all said and done, ladies and gentlemen, as all of our drivers have taken their checkered flags, whether they're a lap down or not, and now we take a look at the race results, of course subject to any stewards' inquiries. So as we do bring those results up on screen for you, let's go through starting with our overall results in round number 6 of the Middle of the Pack Racing League GT3 Championship for 2022 as hosted on iRacing here today at the Interlagos circuit. And as you can see there, John Lauzon taking the win by 1.5 tenths over Luke Burtenshaw, with Jordan Butler completing the overall podium there. The DNA Motorsports driver having a lot of pace, but just not quite able to bring home that P2 versus Burtenshaw, with that battle going all the way down to the wire. And then Tanner Dibble P4 ruined what could have been with a DNA Motorsports double podium being denied by a little bit of an underfuel right towards the end of the race. Ilya Speaker P5 there, well done to the Rockefeller Racing driver, taking the win in the Pro class ahead of Milan Harris P6. Jason Landry P7 there, not his day-to-day in the Lamborghini, but still fighting on hard and still 3 rounds to go. John Kroom bringing home a great result there just through consistency and resilience, P8 ahead of Adrian Fedorowski, your AM winner P9. Samuel Cran P10, and then Dan Okerenza best of the rest P11. As we now come on to the individual classes, starting off with our Pro class, with a limited number in attendance today, only 5 drivers in attendance, but whilst it may have been 5, plenty of battle in action. John Lauzon taking that win by such a short margin versus Luke Burtenshaw. And you could see throughout the race, Burtenshaw's strategy was to wait until the very end and then go on the charge. But I think if he had 1 or 2 more laps, he could have got it done, but it wasn't to be, given how long Butler was behind Lauzon, and Burtenshaw had to try and pick his way past the pair of them. But still, plenty more to come from this trio. There is no doubt about it, with then Tanner Dibble P4 and Jason Landry P5. And as we come on to the Pro-Am class, we can see in a class that was downgraded through attrition today, only 3 drivers making it to the checker flag. Ilya Speaker ahead of teammates Milan Harris and John Kroom. Congratulations to Rockefeller Racing for their podium lockout. And then the retirements of John Wilding, James Logston, Alex Carver-Robbins and Albert Brand. And then we come onto the AM class, our last class but not least, and we can see here that Adrian Fedorowski taking that win in the end, almost 2 seconds clear of Samuel Cran. But I think Cran backing it off towards the end, knowing that P2 would secure him the America's Cup, unless my maths is incorrect for Team Bearpo. The QZ Motorsports driver, however, definitely showing a lot of pace today, and I think Cran, Okerenza and company will now be thinking, could Fedorowski become a late charger for the overall championship win in the AM class? Still, that's your podium there, Fedorowski, Cran and Okerenza. Congratulations to them, particularly Dan Okerenza, who I do believe this is his first podium in the series to date, with Stefan Chalafu there in a battling at P4, not quite able to bring home at the final step of the podium, but keep your eyes out for him in the future. He's definitely looking very fast now. So Harj Padia on his debut at P5 in the AM class, very pleased with that, no doubt about it, for QZ Motorsports. And then Rockefeller Racing's Joe Nagy having a difficult race. P6 was all he could achieve today. He'll be looking to bounce back next time out, ahead of Jesse Jemison Jr., however, who you could argue as well, having a strong race to begin with, but it went wrong towards the end. And the American from MOP Racing will be taking a look at what happened during the mid-season break and looking at how he can get onto the podium in the final 3 races. And we, of course, have Mark Senegal, Glenn Bratton and Lee Porter all finish a lap down, running all the way down to P10. And then Michael Zepp, last but not least, P11 there, retiring 17 laps from the end. But those are the results. Now, the big question, of course, you may be asking is, how does that translate into the America's Cup final standings? Well, ladies and gentlemen, let's bring you those Cup standings. Started off then with the Pro class, we can see that after the completion of all 3 America's Cup races, Jason Landry in the end taking the win by a single point over John Lauzon. That's how close it was, but Landry just doing enough to pip Lauzon to the post by a single point. Congratulations to Jason Landry. John Lauzon, to be fair, digging as much as possible. He needed the win today. He got the win done. But in the end, Landry bringing the car home, albeit last of our pros in P5, but still getting the car home. That's what mattered. And Landry taking the America's Cup. Jordan Butler there, P3 on 126 points, only 1 point clear of Luke Burtenshaw. A brilliant battle between the two of them today, and there's no doubt about it. We're going to see plenty of that in the Japanese Cup. Tanner Dibble there, P5, and how the complexion could have perhaps been different if Dibble was able to bring the car home with the win, but not to be. And then Edwin Offred, P6, Ben Rose, P7, and Shane Larson, P8. Then coming on to the Pro-Am standings in the America's Cup, we can see here that Milan Harris taking the America's Cup in the Pro-Am class. Congratulations to Harris on 124 points to James Logston's 85 points. A solid drive from Harris, and Logston with that early retirement in the end losing out on that ability to bring it all the way home to the finish, and Harris deservedly there digging all the way in, all the way to the end of the race. Ilya Speaker P3 ahead of Fernando Takahashi P4, Matthew Smith at P5, and then Justin Braggan, John Wilding, Alexander Carver-Robbins, John Kroom and Jermaine Warren completing the top 10 in the America's Cup when all said and done, with Albert Brand and Spencer Torrance P11 at P12. And then we come on to our AM class. We can see that Samuel Cran in the end taking the win despite the charge from Adrian Fedorowski today, taking the win by 5 points over Federowski and Kran there, our deserved AM Cup winner, ahead of Federowski and Dan Okranz. They're jumping into P3 at the close, ahead of Jesse Jameson Jr., a gap between them of 5 points, and I can imagine that both of them will be vying for podium finishes over the remainder of the season. They're both looking very similar on pace in the Mercedes. Glenn Bratton, P5 on 78 points, they're on merit, and then we can see Lee Porter, Joe Nagy, Stefan Chalafu, Mark Senegal and PG Christensen completing the top 10, with Blake Phillips, Sahaj Padilla, Michael Zepp, Kevin Lizarazo, Braden Melling, Jose Maury and Roger Ganesh completing the America's Cup for our AM division. And just to give you a recap of our America's Cup winners, we can see here in the Pro class it was the number 5 car of Jason Landry, in the Pro-Am class the number 169 car of Milan Harris, and in the AM class the number 260 car of Samuel Cran. Congratulations to our America's Cup winners. They will all be receiving a financial prize of $5 for their efforts, and now the big question is, can they bring home the Japanese Cup as well, make it 2 cups in sequence, or will they find themselves being undone by a rival within the class? Well, the challenge will be to them, the pressure will be on them, and of course, in the Japanese Cup, they've also got to worry about the overall championship, given that the two will conclude together at the end of round number 9. But speaking of things concluding, ladies and gentlemen, that's all we've got time for today. Thank you very much for watching. And if you have enjoyed the show today and you want to know more about the Middle of the Pack Racing League community, then why not check out our official Discord, invite link available on screen as seen there. Alternatively, if you're a fan of Twitter, you can always go to our official Twitter, twitter.com/MOP Racing, and find out all the latest news and information that's happening in the world of the Middle of the Pack Racing League community. But now, of course, our drivers are afforded a week's break, but after that break, they'll be coming back to go from the American continent to Japan for the kickoff of the Japanese Cup. We will be back, ladies and gentlemen, on Saturday the 5th of November for round number 7, the first of our 2 sprint races in Japan at the Twin Ring Motegi circuit. The racing will, of course, occur a little bit early on what will be Wednesday the 2nd of November. We'll be bringing it to you as if it were live on Saturday the 5th of November, and the question will be, how will it all start in the final third of the season? Will we see any early drama? Will we see any favourites emerge in the overall championship and the Japanese Cup? Well, all that and more we'll have to find out then. But until then, we have been the Middle of the Pack Racing League. I've been your host and commentator, Paul TX141 Walsh. And until next time, have a great rest of your weekend. Remember to stay safe, stay well, stay smiling, but most importantly, remember to stay on track. Good night.